All right, hello everyone. We'll go ahead and get started as attendees trickle on, just so that we have plenty of time. So thank you for joining us for the Native Controlling Hypertension and Risk Through Technology, or Native Chart, and Native Center for Alcohol Research and Education, or NCARE webinar series. My name is Carol Kobacki, and I'm a research program manager at the Institute for iReach and Education to Advance Community Health, also known as iReach. Next slide, please. Great, I quickly want to go over the Zoom features today. On the bottom of your screen in this webinar format, you should see a chat option, which you can use to send messages to all participants, or you can send a message directly to the hosts. Let us know if you're having any technical issues through the chat. We'll try to help you. As we get started, the panelist invites you to take a moment and post in the chat who you are, the organization or location you're calling in from, and your experience, if any, with agritourism. So please go ahead and put that into the chat now. Please note that there's also a raise your hand feature. However, we ask that you instead please type your questions into the Q&A box on the bottom right, and we will answer them during the designated Q&A time at the end of the presentation. Next slide. So for today's webinar, we'll provide a brief overview of iReach, as well as the Native Chart and NCARE research centers. Then our panelists will begin the discussion on agritourism's role in supporting Native communities, and we'll end with a Q&A session. After the conclusion of this webinar, you'll be given a chance to provide feedback through an evaluation survey. A recording of the webinar will also be available on both the Native Chart and NCARE websites, which can be accessed through our main webpage at ireach.wsu.edu. We'll also send an email with the link as soon as it's posted. Okay, next slide. Great, I see some people adding into the chat. Excited to see everybody joining us. I'll now welcome Dr. Gary Ferguson, who will provide a brief overview of our research institute.
Kamagala Kamna, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Gary Ferguson. I serve as Director of Outreach and Engagement, and I'm also a Research Associate Professor at iReach as well. I'm Unaga and an enrolled member of the Kagan-Tai-Gungan tribe from Sappoint, Alaska, so from the Aleutian region originally, and have been working at Washington State University for the last 2 years. Have a big passion for traditional foods, local economies, and really excited about our talk today. And the sharing that will be from our group as well. So I want to share a little bit about the Institute for Research and Education to Advance Community Health. We challenge the status quo and we advance community health through partnerships and collaboration. We conduct research with rural, Native, and Latinx populations, health networks, and populations with substance use disorders. Next slide, please. Our iReach faculty belong to various colleges at Washington State University, and we partner with external collaborators at universities across the country. I originally engaged iReach when I was working at the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium in 2006, and have been a fan ever since of the amazing research that happens here. The Institute houses 5 primary research programs, including partnerships for Native health. Next slide. iReach's Native Health conducts community-based research and education to improve health and reduce health disparities among American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. We do this by working with both community and academic partners in community settings. We focus on achieving health equity, community outreach and engagement, and training and education. We have over 60 partners across the country, and that's growing, including tribal colleges, Native organizations, tribes, universities, and satellite centers. Northwest Health Education and Research Outcomes Network, or Northwest Heron, aims to improve the quality of clinical care and ameliorate health disparities in communities across Washington and surrounding areas. And our Latinx Health is advancing Latinx health through the formation of community partnerships and focused academic research. I would now like to welcome Dr. Amanda Boyd, who will share information on Native Chart and Care, which are centers within iReach's Partnerships for Native Health Core. Next, and Dr. Boyd.
Well, thank you, Gary, and hello, and thank you all for joining us for this webinar on agritourism. My name is Amanda Boyd, and I'm an associate professor in the College of Communication at Washington State University. I'm Métis and Daneza from the Peace River country of Canada. And I also co-lead Native Chart and co-lead the dissemination cores of Native Chart and Care with Dr. Gary Ferguson. So I have the pleasure of introducing these two NIH-funded research centers that are co-hosting the presentation. So within Native Chart, our aim is to improve control of blood pressure and other risk factors for cardiovascular disease in American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Pacific Islanders with diagnosed hypertension. The center is comprised of 3 community-based intervention projects and 4 supporting cores. Next slide, please. So the Care Center aims to optimize alcohol intervention research for public health in general and our Native community partners in particular. We accomplish this goal by collaboratively engaging with research project teams and the pilot projects to conduct research that yields high quality data while simultaneously meeting the unique needs of our partners. So next slide. We have the pleasure of working with 7 satellite centers located in Alaska, Colorado, Minnesota, New Mexico, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Washington. The work that we do with these centers ensures that our research topics are important to American Indian and Alaska Natives throughout the US, and outreach and dissemination efforts are amplified throughout the country. And now I would like to pass it back to Gary Ferguson and our other panelists, Trevor Lane and Lisa Chase. Thank you.
So I get to start us off for this conversation, and just to give a little perspective, as I shared, I'm from the Aleutian region in Alaska, and this is a photo of us collecting some beach greens or Hockney paploides, which are prolific along our coastlines. It's an amazing plant, super nutritious. It was documented as far as some of our first colonizing influences. This was a scurvy cure, super rich in vitamin C. And from a traditional perspective, many of us, due to colonization, have been disconnected from our traditional foods and a lot of our customs, our cultures, our ways of knowing and healing. And there's this huge renewal, this revitalization of our cultures, and including our plants, and those that are both nutritious and help us with health and well-being, as well as avoiding chronic disease, as well as those that are medicinal in nature and our first medicines. And this reclaiming of our first medicines and our health through food as medicine is a movement that is so exciting. And I've seen it over the last 20 years be exponential, including some folks I'm seeing who are a part of this webinar today, who are shakers and movers. So I'm really excited to see who's attending this conference, because I feel like we'll have some great input and dialogue at the end. But as we reclaim our first medicines, our first foods, there's an economy behind that as well, a local economy, as we share these first foods that we so enjoy and are so connecting us to our ancestral knowledge and ways of knowing and healing. And also, okay, there we go, I'm back. And also the opportunity for us to look at how do we have this be a part of the local economy that helps us to survive in a more cash economy now as we move forward. Next slide, please. So as we look at our values, which to me, as we think of as tribal nations, how our values help inform us in our future, there's huge opportunities, as this slide highlights. This is a picture of a poster from the Alaska Association of School Boards, that one of our elders, several of our elders helped to really put forward. In this case, Moses Dirks, I want to give him a shout out. One of our tribal leaders and educators helped us remember what's important. And as an Unanga, there's some incredible wisdom as we look at our values. And within that is also this connection to the land, a deep connection to live with and respect the land, sea, and all nature. The Unanga are known for sustainable lifestyles connected to the land and harvesting from the land and living off the land and it being a sustainable economy, never overusing or depleting resources and also sharing those resources with each other. Next slide. And as we look at how our communities in Alaska, many of us are so blessed because we have these incredible food systems that surround us and we are able to live off the land. This is an Alaska magazine that inspired the store outside your door, which I was so honored to be a part of and be a co-producer with the Alaskan Tribal Health Consortium and all of our tribal partners that help make this happen. We've got videos that highlight how to hunt, fish, gather, and grow. And from that has come this opportunity not only for subsistence and traditional food economies, but also how does that translate into tourism? How does that translate into sharing with other regions or having a cash economy? I'm a commercial fisherman growing up that way. We are farmers of the sea. And we have sustained our communities through commercial fishing. And as we look at the future, how does the future connect us with our roots as those who live off the land? And how can we be a part of that bounty as ocean farmers? And also, what else is in our environment that we can share with others? We can trade, that's part of our culture in the past. And as we look to the future, that's a part of our way of sustaining our lifestyles and living in place. Next slide. And it's important to our tribal leadership. This is the Alaska Federation of Natives, which is our annual gathering of tribal leaders, policymakers. We have all of our priorities that we list. And in this case, this is 2014. But every year, there are resolutions that come forward related to protecting our resources, food sovereignty, the ability to govern those resources, subsistence rights, protection of them, because in the end, we see our natural resources, our food system, as part of the way that we will survive in place and has kept us thriving for thousands of years. And so having ownership and connection to those resources is really important to our tribal nations within Alaska and beyond. And we understand that, you know, climate change, all these other factors are affecting our food systems, are affecting the way that we live off the land. And at the same time, there are opportunities within that to have local economies that not only are just surviving, but are thriving. Next slide. And this is a word Nakantugado from the Kanaisi and the Dena'ina region, where this means the tide is returning. We are having great opportunity now as our young people are engaging our language, our culture, our traditions, our food systems, and local economies. They're coming up with very creative ways to thrive and to be connected to the land, to be connected to the food and the medicine. Next slide. And with it comes this holistic perspective that it's not just about the food and the local economy, but it's our culture, it's our language, it's our traditions, it's our values. Those help us to understand how to do it in sustainable ways and to do it in ways that are respectful of our cultural teachings, making sure that we keep things in integrity. And it's also, to me, from a health perspective, it's a huge opportunity as we think of culture as medicine, and how can we turn that into not only a way of well-being for our future generations, but also ways that we can sustain them through local economies. Next slide. And having had the honor and privilege of doing the canoe journey from Cake to Juneau, gosh, it's almost been 10 years now, but it was a profound experience of connecting with our Southeast traditional cultures and our ceremonies, and there's such a vital local economy. And even though the tourism industry has gotten some criticism, and I think it needs to be done in a sustainable fashion. I think that's one of the biggest criticisms that I agree with, is we want to make sure that any kind of tourism that focuses on our culture and our ways that we get to celebrate and others can celebrate with us and learn from, that we make sure that it's sustainable for the future. And so I agree that it's important for us to, as we move forward in these local economies that are moving beyond dependency on oil and natural resources, to looking at cultural tourism, food tourism. I mean, all this is so exciting to see happen, that we always maintain this understanding that it needs to be sustainable and rooted in our respect for the land, the sea, the animals, and an environment that will be there for our future generations. Next slide. And it's exciting as we look at food as medicine. This is a concept that many, in being a foodie myself, I love food. I love cultural foods from all over the world. Our traditions within America and Alaska, we've got some incredible food traditions, and I see a revitalization. In fact, I see Chef Amy, I think, is out there on the webinar, in a shaker mover in Alaska. We've got some amazing people doing incredible work to bring these food traditions and take these incredible foods that have been our medicines for many years, thousands of years. In this case, this is mountain sorrel, and this is taken up in Point Hope. We have these beautiful traditions. And when we look at harvesting these foods, not only is it the connection to the food, and they're tasty, they're incredibly nutritious and medicinal, but also just being out in the land, being connected to each other and nature is incredibly healing and promotes health for anybody that participates in those activities. Next slide. And this is our wormwood artemisia, which is prolific in many of our communities, which is a powerful medicine. We have this opportunity to reinvigorate our local medicines, and use them practically in salves and in teas, and both topically and internally. I'm a naturopathic physician by training, and our traditional medicines that come from Alaska and from our tribal cultures across the nation, there's a rich compendium of medicine that not only has helped keep our generations healthy for many years, but also has informed many of our pharmaceuticals that have natural analogs. And so this rich tradition of healing is as strong today as it ever has been. And I think there's a renewal in the interest of these medicines, and also how it can be served in a local economy rather than be a big pharmaceutical. How can local tribes and nations be able to use these resources and create their own medicines and economies, rather than having big corporate America step in? We need to control our own medicines in the future, and this is an opportunity. I'm very excited to see this interest grow in local economies based on our medicines as well. Next slide. And as we look at culture as medicine, this is Elder Edith Nagiak in Barrow teaching us about willow, diamond leaf willow, and it's as a food and also a medicine. That this is also, culture as medicine. This is, to me, this is violence prevention. This is domestic violence prevention. This is well-being. This is connectedness. And I feel like at the root of our food as medicine movement is connection, is culture, is our next generations growing up healthy and vital and feeling connected to who they are. And I feel like that is an important traditional cultural value, is to know who you are and where you come from. And at the heart of local economies and how we sustain ourselves with our foods and our medicines, and also how others can benefit from that by visiting us and participating in our local cultures. We all benefit, and I'm excited to see the transmission of knowledge, our elders and youth connecting with each other. We have this next month, we have the Elders and Youth Annual Conference, which is well attended, and it's so inspiring to see healing happen through the connection of our generations and our cultures. Next slide. And food is medicine. It's the root of a Western medicine. Hippocrates shares that food should be your medicine. This is an age-old concept from all of our cultures. Next slide. And as we look at it rolling out across Alaska and the nation, there are incredible resources, and these have turned into cookbooks and ways that we understand the food and where it comes from, the respect for the food and the ceremonies that go with that food and that medicine. It's a rich underlying way of understanding our connectedness to our food and the environment. Next slide. And it's been shared not only locally and to inform us and to help inspire us and our next generation so that they grow up with the knowledge, but also there's interest from the CDC and the NIH to understand that foods contribute to health and well-being, and they help us prevent chronic disease, and they help us to live vitally. And we want to make sure we protect those food systems and those cultural ways. Next slide. And as I like to share, culture is medicine. And here's some young people that I have the honor of working with in some of our culture camps. This is in Atka, where we have had amazing experiences in learning from each other, from our elders, our cultural experts, and also how to collect our foods, how to prepare them, how to make medicine. All of that gets shared with our next generation. And I feel as we look at not only are our tribal members hungry for this knowledge, but I think many of us want to connect with that. And this provides an opportunity. And having lived in Hawaii for a couple of years and being inspired by the Hawaiian culture and how they kept their culture alive, as well as had local economies based upon tourism and cultural tourism, there's a lot of lessons that we can learn that we can make it work to also protect our culture and also have local economies that are thriving. Next slide. And this is a product of Culture Camp salve from Atka. This is our Neogugum Tanaska salve, which when we think of how we gave it away to elders first, and then we shared it with community members, and it was very popular, continues to be popular, using incredibly powerful plants from the Aleutian region, where our tribal doctors are sharing that they're especially powerful given the location of the harsh environment creates incredible medicinal properties. And I feel like this is an opportunity. As we looked at other regions, we've been teaching these classes, local economies have stepped up to create added value products. And I feel like this is part of the local economies that not only from a tourism perspective, but also from a economic perspective and commerce perspective to where there's a need for this. And you go to AFN this year in October in Alaska, which is our large gathering of Alaska Native people, you'll see a lot of these salves and products, and it's exponential, it's growing, and it's so exciting to see us reclaim our first medicines. Next slide. And before I hand it over to Lisa, I'm just going to share a quote from Dr. Rita Blumenstein, one of my teachers and inspirations, who's now in the spirit world, advising us as an ancestor. She shares, "We are free to be who we are, to create our own life out of our past and out of the present. We are ancestors. When we heal ourselves, we also heal our ancestors, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, and our children. When we heal ourselves, we heal Mother Earth." Profound words, and a great way to jump off and have Lisa take it over to talk more about agritourism and the bigger picture. And I believe that's my last slide, team, if you want to advance. Yep. And I'm handing it over to Lisa Kagasakuk. Thank you for letting me share, and I'll come back and we'll have a dialogue here after Lisa and Trevor share as well. So Lisa, thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. That was really beautiful and inspiring, Gary. And now I'm going to jump into the boring academic stuff of definitions and numbers. It may be a tough transition, but I want to take a step back and say I think the reason why I was invited here today is because I'm working with agritourism in Vermont. I'm with University of Vermont Extension and the Vermont Tourism Research Center, where I've been working with agritourism for the past 20 years. But more recently, I've started working on a national and international level with agritourism. And it's been really exciting to see this moment, see this coming together around agritourism. And I was just looking at the list of participants here, and I recognize many of the names. So I know for some of you, you've seen this slide, you're going to see my next couple slides, like you've already seen them already. But there were quite a few names that I didn't recognize. So for your sake, I'll give you a little background on agritourism. And, you know, building off of what Gary was saying, the practices gathering around farms, food production, I love that term, ocean farmers, aquaculture, coming together around it, celebrating it. That's not new. That's been around for as long as agriculture and aquaculture have been around. What's new, actually, is our disconnect as a society from food production and the disconnection of thinking about food as medicine. And so it's sort of on us to bring it back. And this term agritourism first was coined in the 1980s in Italy, where they saw mass migrations from the rural areas into the urban areas, and the government and the rural communities were trying to think of ways to bring people back. So they developed some financial incentives to get people back to the rural communities, working the land and restoring farm buildings that were centuries old. And they called it Agritourismo in Italy, and it was officially coined as legislation in 1985. Since then, this concept and practice of agritourism, and the term, which you might hear a lot of different names for it, farm tourism, agritainment even, agrotourism, it's spelled all different ways. And by the way, there's all different definitions and understandings of it. It has now spread around the world. Just a couple weeks ago, the last week in August, in Vermont, we held an international workshop on agritourism, and we had over 500 people joining from 56 different countries. It was a hybrid conference, so we had 350 people in Vermont, and then many more connecting from around the globe. And it was really exciting to hear what's going on with this agritourism concept, very broadly defined around the globe. And I promised the organizers that I'm not going to get into the weeds with the definitions, but as an academic, sometimes we do get a little lost in how is it defined? And, of course, policymakers get very engrossed in exactly how is this defined and how is it worded and what's included and what's not. I'm going to summarize it by saying the core, where there's agreement, is on-farm experiences and product sales that are deeply connected to agriculture. And then there's stuff that takes place off of farms, or maybe on a farm but isn't so connected to agriculture. And there's generally different categories, 5 categories: hospitality, education, direct sales, entertainment, and outdoor recreation. And I will say, being in Vermont, I'm kind of used to just saying farm, but really we mean any kind of agricultural or aquacultural operation. So ranches, vineyards, aquaculture, it's all part of it. Could I have the next slide, please? And agritourism, whatever you call it, is it's having a moment now, I think. It sort of took off initially in Italy and was kind of thought of this agriturismo, this thing for like Italy, Spain, France, just a few countries. It's now happening around the world. And a few years ago, the first industry report came out about agritourism, which is not a peer-reviewed, for the academics out here, this is not, the numbers you see here are not based on a peer-reviewed publication. These are these like industry reports that hard to know what exactly goes into it, but I put it up here, not necessarily to say these numbers are 100% accurate, but mostly to say we knew agritourism was a real thing when they were putting out industry reports and asking people to pay $5,000 to buy this report. That means it's hit the big time in some sense anyway. And as of now, the global agritourism market size is estimated to be over $9 billion, and there's 12% growth projected annually. So we're looking at close to $19 billion in 2027. And one of the interesting things in this report is that they do look at market share by type of agritourism. And there you can see combined those 5 categories that I mentioned. And I especially want to draw your attention to direct market, direct sales of products. And globally, it's less than 20%. And so over 80% is the experiences. Could I have the next slide, please? Keep that in mind as I move to the next slide. So this is information about the US. Different source, much more reputable source. This is from the USDA Census of Agriculture. Little dated, however, the last census was in 2017. So they're now gearing up for the 2022 census. And here I want to bring your attention, keeping up that thread that we were discussing as we move from one slide to the next. Globally, we were looking at direct sales as about 20% and like 80% experiences. Based on this US Census of Agriculture data, which is reported directly by producers, it's almost the opposite. 75% is direct sales of food for human consumption. And I'm going to say these numbers, I've been giving the USDA Census of Ag a hard time about this for a while. So if any of you are here, love to talk to you and bend your ear a little bit about it. All we're asking about, well, the only data we can glean from the Census of Ag is direct sales of food. So medicines, plants, other products that are not edible for human consumption are not included here. So I do think these numbers are vastly understated. But 75% of the agritourism and direct sales income, according to this census, is direct sales. And then the experiences, agritourism and recreational services, is another quarter. And even though I think these numbers are understated, we're still looking at, back in 2017, 3.7 billion and over 150,000 producers around the country. Could I have the next slide, please? We wanted to learn a little bit more about who was doing what, and what are the major challenges and concerns of producers and their communities, and how collectively we can do a better job of supporting them. And so we did a survey of agritourism operators, including on-farm direct sales. And for the sake of time, I won't go into the details here on some of our findings, but I just thought I'd put the link up. And I think I just saw Adam putting it into chat. Thank you. If you want to learn more about what producers had to say about agritourism, feel free to visit this link, and I'm also happy to share more information about it. Could I get the next slide, please? I want to close with this slide, though, that talks a little bit about the opportunities and the challenges of agritourism. And I want to just put it right there. Even though I work with agritourism in Vermont, around the US, and more recently around the country, it's definitely not for everyone. In fact, at this conference, one of the presenters was talking about, and I'm quoting here, saying, tourism is the modern colonialism. And I think it's something that we really need to, as we think more about agritourism and direct sales and bringing visitors onto our farms and into our communities, we really need to think about and be very intentional about the ways we're doing it. And Gary was talking about sustainable tourism for the environment, but for the communities as well, environmentally, economically, and culturally and socially. That's so important. Really focusing on the food sovereignty and what the tribal communities and entrepreneurs need first. And then thinking about, am I echoing? Okay, and I think it's better now. Really thinking about what they need, we need as producers and communities first, and then understanding how we can educate visitors and provide them with amazing experiences where they will grow and learn and heal themselves, but not at the expense of the communities and the producers who are offering these experiences. And we've got an expert here in the room with us, Trevor Lane, who has been doing this on the ground in Washington State University. So I'll now turn it over to him to dig into some of the examples.
Thank you, Lisa and Gary. Just to speak to what you both said holistically, that disconnectedness is why I do what I do. And I love telling stories. Anybody who knows me knows that story is important in the work that I do. Storytelling brings people together, and it does so much to move things forward and create that connectedness as we look at this landscape of disconnectedness. In working with Lisa and Gary, the work is actually international. You know, we focus nationally and at a local level. And as we look to this disconnectedness and being respectful, and what I call the 3 R's, being respectful, reciprocal, and responsible, as we step through this landscape, it's important that we remember that this is not an exercise in diversity and inclusion as we work with our tribes. This is an opportunity for a political and economic conversation and how to be good neighbors, how to be good partners, and how to respect the sovereignty and uniqueness that comes not only with our tribes, but the rural communities that border them and the local foods that go with that, that they oftentimes share with one another. That having been said, I want to jump in and speak a little bit about some of the projects that I have been able to foster, facilitate, or support in one way or another. And much like Gary, I'm not native to Washington. I came here by way of Oklahoma. So my experience in working with Oklahoma tribes has helped me navigate the landscape here. But next slide, please. Oh, the 3rd R, responsible, respectful, and reciprocal. All right, so this is a map of our Washington agricultural community. And as you can see, it's concentrated in several areas. And as you might expect, most of the agritourism operations that I support are in these areas. One of the things that I'm working on now is trying to help non-agritourism operators find pathways that are conducive for everybody, because agritourism can complicate schedules and expectations with harvest and all the things that go with growing food. And so this gives you an idea of my work across the state. There's 39 counties with 27 federally recognized tribes. And I'm slowly working my way to having touched physically each and every one of those counties and tribes. I lost count, but I think I was up to 27 to 30 different counties and about 18 different tribes. So on that note, this gives you some visual perspective of where my work takes me often. And I'm located in northeastern Washington, so I spend a large amount of my time on the east side of the state. And Gary's partnership and friendship and collegiality has helped me expand our abilities on the west side. So that having been said, next slide, please. So this is about agriculture and heritage. And currently I'm working with the Kalispel and Colville Confederated Tribes to help them through a focus on farm and ranch education with the value-added products. The Kalispel have camas that has all kinds of nutritional and medicinal aspects that it has to offer. And the Colville have identified red garlic as a hot commodity that they are beginning to look at. I'm not in the day-to-day and all of that. I certainly don't speak for tribes, but I did want to point those out in my work because these, I think, will be drawing more attention over time as they move out of their small business ecosystem development and into more commercial enterprise industries. The other thing that we see happening across agriculture and heritage is connecting tribal members to science-based education programs. The federally recognized tribal extension program through the USDA partners with extension services, and we had the second in the country, first in the state tribal office located at the Colville Confederation of Tribes. And we have seen partnerships that I have been told previously were impossible turn into formal MOAs around broadband, precision ag, greenhouse development, and a formal community and economic development strategy that the tribes and the counties are looking at trying to find some collaboration around. So that's been all through food. And I think the other important thing, so I work with Lisa and Gary, food is medicine. Food sovereignty should be important to all of us. It's about how we feed ourselves, how we care for ourselves, and how do we act as liaisons amongst ourselves with such a history that's filled with all kinds of atrocities and abuses and things. As we come to reckon with that, the way that I deal with it is what I learned in Oklahoma is we all know what the woes are. So how do we focus on the wins? And for me in Ferry County, the win was broadband. Everybody wants broadband. It's part of quality of life, like water, air, all that good stuff with natural resources. It's just something we have to have in the modern world. And out of that has come the greenhouse development, the precision ag conversations. And we're having conversations that I've been told were impossible before, all because we found a win. You know, so I like to focus this slide on the Choctaw Nation because as I speak to all of these different things, they have moved out of this state of development and into commercial grade enterprises. And as you see on the left-hand side of the slide, they support direct marketing. They have a variety of workshops, field days, on-farm research. They do field demonstrations, and they provide technical assistance to people who want to partner with the tribe as well. They're doing a lot to find that collaborative lens that allows and respects for the sovereignty and uniqueness that goes with their tribe. Next slide, please. One of the things that I really enjoyed, and my son's a Cherokee citizen, and I enjoyed taking him to the Cherokee Nation and going to the Heritage Center where they have farms and crops. We've done beading, we've done leatherworking, we've done pottery, but they have a village that has food and focuses on the culture. And I provided a link there in the slide for anybody who'd like to see a quick overview. But I like to point this out because it is a very robust system. They do everything from language to food and other things and everything in between to bring that connectedness and that partnership and that awareness and that education. Next slide, please. And as we look to the future here in Washington, we see very similar things happening with our ocean farmers. Thank you for that, Gary. And we're seeing the Quinault, the Spokane, the Colville, the Maka Nations bring people into their fisheries and hatcheries for the education on what it takes to produce these specimens, harvest them, and put them back into the wild so that they can access them in a way that works for their culture. Next slide, please. And through these synergies and the farm opportunities, I've been able to take my experience with farms, festivals, and fairs and begin to identify different opportunities around the state where tribes are taking these agriculture experiences to the next level by doing community-based events that are focused on cooking, games, music even, and just spending time together. And I wanted to point out that the Maka Nation does a really good job of taking things to the next level and then allowing people to come in and experience the event. Next slide, please. Some of the elements of success when publishing on the promising practice of agritourism, these are some of the concepts that I've been able to glean very specifically out of my research that have direct application to the day-to-day that help me, that have helped bring Lisa and Gary and I together, that keep our work moving forward. But we're starting to see some really good work out of the USDA with Farm Bill updates. We're working with different tribal nonprofits and indigenous groups to begin to address the disparities and the disenfranchisement that exist. I like to tell a funny story of when I applied for a grant one time, and the response I got back from the federal agency was, great idea, would love to see this come to happen. Impact is not quite big enough. Well, now we're starting to see that there are lessons to learn and there are opportunities in here for urban people in urban-centric areas to benefit from the knowledge and information that we have. And with the advent of broadband, much like the Electrification Act in the 30s, extension is right in the middle of all of these conversations, all of this funding. And so I want to encourage people to look to the USDA, look for these Farm Bill updates, reach out to us. I know I pride myself in trying to be accessible, and I know Lisa and Gary are always responsive. So if there's anything we can do to help you in this arena, please reach out. The other thing that I'm seeing is I'm seeing tribes start to take on their own ag departments and actually physically, technically support agritourism. The Kalispell are really doing an amazing job in this arena at moving to the next level of being self-actualized, self-realized, and self-directed in this area. And I'm expecting and hoping to be doing a lot more with them in time. And just like any Indian telling your story, it's a huge piece of all of this, learning how to tell those farm stories, how to tell the story about the tribe and how you got where you are, and then crafting those messages in a way that speak to people that will attract the kind of people that you want to your farm. We're seeing traditional media, public relations take on a new spin, and we're finding that new media, social media, it's changing the old landscape that so many people are used to. And the farmers that are trying to understand this and the digital equity opportunities that are coming out of this, keep your eyes open for that as well, because there's going to be lots of funding and education and opportunities to rally around that. But I also encourage what I call the 3 C's when it comes to agritourism: collaboration, cooperation, and communication. And that's important for partnerships, sponsorships, and other collaborations that you identify, because these public and private partnerships are really what drive the success for the farmers and the individual community members. A little further down on the list, extension. That's what we do. It's our land grant mission, to figure out these collaborations, to help with outreach, to pull farmers and communities together. Feel free to reach out to your extension director. If you need more help trying to figure things out, I'm here. And then last but not least, I cannot recommend this enough if you work with tribes, but IANTA and your local tourism or state-based event organizations are critical pieces in making this work, so that this disconnectedness doesn't lead to more colonialism, and it's respectful of the local environments and the sovereignty that go with these conversations. Next slide, please. And that's my last one. And that is my cell on there, so text or call anytime.
Great. Go ahead, Gary.
So thank you, Trevor and Lisa, for such compelling conversation and information. And I know we've got an opportunity now for question and answer. So please put your questions in the chat there for us to be able to have a conversation around. I'm a little handicapped with technology today. I'm beaming in from the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians at Tulalip, and so I'm beaming in from my car, actually, in my iPhone, so I don't have this access to as much technology. And so I'm going to hand it over to Karen Adam to get us with questions. But first off, I'm going to jump into one question to Trevor and Lisa to maybe discuss a little bit more, because we talk about agritourism, and I mentioned ocean farmers. I think reframing some of our more traditional activities in the agritourism for those of us who don't necessarily feel like we're a farmer. But I was just one of the presentations at the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians annual conference, shares from USDA, and they were like, if you make $1,000 or more in revenue, or potentially can, then you're a farmer as far as a farm. Can you elaborate a little bit more about like who can step into this space and different variations of that? Because I think some people don't necessarily identify as a farmer per se. Can you, Lisa, Trevor, can you expound a little bit more upon that as we step into the space of like what is farming and agritourism, and at what level people can get involved in?
Lisa, do you want to take that one, and then I'll tell a story afterwards?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'll start with like some numbers, and then Trevor will tell the story. That's kind of how we do things. Well, I think when you mentioned, if you have on average about $1,000 in income, that's the rule for the USDA Census of Agriculture. So right now, actually, I think already it has started, or if it hasn't started yet, it's about to start. Data collection. I think it's about to start data collection for the 2022 Census of Agriculture. So in terms of being counted, having, being represented in the data that's shared and that's presented and that's analyzed, all over the country. I'll put in a plug for the USDA Census of Ag to fill it out. And I think you're right, Gary, that we all need to think more broadly about what counts as agriculture. You don't have to be farming hundreds of acres, and certainly small scale subsistence activities absolutely count and need to be counted. And really, oftentimes those are much more amenable for agritourism and the visitor experience than these large production facilities. And I'll jump in with one more point, that when we look long term over the history of this planet, of Mother Earth, this like big scale commercial ag is this like brand new blip. And really what's been happening, the long-term trend is the small scale, more subsistence types of production and harvesting that's shared with communities and shared with visitors. And I feel like we've sort of all gotten derailed by big ag and forget that, no, wait, that's like the new and different thing. And we're just trying to bring back what's actually always been around. I'll stop there, Trevor.
Awesome. I was processing that and trying to think how to tell this story. And so I'll start with a comment first. And as I was working to publish The Promising Practice of Agritourism and seeing Dr. Chase's name on almost every piece of research, it seemed like, it became clear to me that rules and regulations complicate this conversation, especially as it relates to land use. And a lot of my work right now is taking me into land use conversations, and not being an attorney makes it really tricky to help people think through the systems approach that it takes to answer this question. And so my story is this. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, I got a call from a lady on the west side who lives in a farming area, but just lives in a residential zone tract, piece of land. And she has been doing barn weddings for a long time. And this whole concept of agritourism is just fascinating to her. And farmers around her thought, hey, this would be really cool. We could work together. You handle the administrative component, do your barn stuff, do your weddings, lots of, music events and stuff, and life is good. And that was all fine until the county planner found out about all of this. And apparently there are rules and regulations. And as I dig into this situation, even though they don't make money from farming, they're making money from farm-like activities called agritourism, arguably. And now they have a commercial grade business. And so the conversation of just bringing people into a farming area became infinitely more complex because of a residential small business. So to answer that question, it's very complicated. And I think this is also another opportunity to remind everybody, reach out to us. Like, if we don't have the answer, we know a lot of different people. We can create a lot of different connections, help you find the answers that you need. But that's my funny little story to answer that. And it's kind of like research. What does it mean when? And the answer is always, it depends.
Thank you, Trevor and Lisa. And I'll hand it over to Kara and Adam to field any more questions from our group today.
Great. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Trevor.
Okay, so we do have a couple questions in the Q&A here. So initially, Lisa, you talked about the disconnection of city dwelling people from the production of food. We know there are structural barriers to access for urban dwelling individuals to experience farms and agriculture. Do you have any ideas or know of any programs that help to support access to agritourism?
That is a really important question. And so I know we have a lot of people here, participants here with us today that also have a ton of experience and knowledge of resources. So I want to open that question up to everyone and crowdsource the answer. So for all of you folks out there, do you have ideas of know of any programs that help to support access to agritourism? Type into the chat, let us know. We should pull that information together, because some of you may remember, some of you have been working for a while in this field like I have. When local food became a kind of a thing, 20 years ago or something, there were major concerns, and there still are concerns, that it can be more expensive. Is it kind of like an elitist, thing that becomes inaccessible, even though it was around first and it's been around for millennial? All of a sudden the pendulum swings, and eating locally is this like expensive elitist thing, not the thing that, used to be accessible and what everybody did. And there now are so many programs underway to, for example, CSA shares for different groups, and so many different programs to make sure that local food really is accessible. And I haven't seen that same attention being given to experiences, on-farm experiences. Where I see it the most, I feel like a gateway to agritourism is in elementary school or preschool, when you take the kids to the nearby farm, and that can be funded by by the school PTO or different education groups. That's kind of like how it starts, but I haven't come across, and I was hoping the chat would light up with all these programs, and I'm a little disappointed it hasn't. So good. Okay, I'm seeing something from Kelly here. Where I want to go with this is, I think there may be some programs out there, maybe at small scales. I think there needs to be a lot more effort made so that these agricultural and aquacultural experiences really are accessible to everyone, and not just the select few that have the resources to travel and take advantage of it. And that needs to happen in a way that is not at the expense of the community and the producers, but that also builds up the producers.
I have a story. I met a group of students, PhD candidates in Pullman recently. And as we got to talking, they talked about on-farm education, to which I just simply said, "Oh, tell me more." And the O. Henry short ending is they are working on an Airbnb for agritourism, and trying to find different models to help the BIPOC and underserved rural areas benefit from this as they roll it out. I think they're probably 6 to 12 months away from being able to launch it. But this is an interesting conversation, talking about finding places to be able to go, a lot more effort to centralize these kind of things. I thought it was ironic that as you were talking, I thought of those students from last week, because I think that'll be an exciting project.
Yeah, I want to just tag on and thank Kelly Hepler from the Colorado Agritourism Association for talking about farm tours in Colorado. And I want to mention that Kelly is also with AANTA, the American Indian Native Alaskan Tourism Association, which they are really good partners here in terms of making sure these experiences are accessible to all and also benefit the communities. So I think I'm really glad that Kyra brought up that question, and I think there's some answers, but a lot more work that we can do to help support agritourism from both the visitor and the operator perspective.
And another comment, just to spark, as we look at agritourism and the potential for local economic development, sustainability of some of our communities. I think of a lot of our Alaska villages and small areas that are so vital. We've got local fishing economy. We have incredible landscapes and food systems, cultures, ceremonies and dances. I mean, I feel like the world is hungry for culture and connection. And I feel like we need to reframe these opportunities and also look at learning from experts who've done this before, what to watch out for, legal issues, intellectual property issues, all of those pieces, there's a lot of opportunity and resources available to help develop these local economies that, you know, in the end, it's small and people like to experience that small, intimate connection to culture and people, the food, and it's all kinds of scales, right? And it's all kinds of cultures and ways, and even farming. You know, you may not consider yourself a farmer, but you know, with USDA, there's lots of ways and expansive ways to think about farming, right? So this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for sustainability of our communities. And I feel like as we look at moving away from big ag as our primary way of getting our food, and looking at local food systems and these small farms and what is a farm, for us to be able to, you know, really look at a sustainable future for the planet. I mean, this is deep work, and it's also fun work. I mean, it's delicious work as we think of the food. So I feel like this is a huge opportunity for everyone at the table, regardless of where you've been from in the country. And I'm going to open it up for any final comments. I know we're right at the hour from Lisa and Trevor.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So I just want to mention that if anyone else has any further questions or anything you didn't get answered, I know Trevor put his information up there, but you're also welcome to send any questions for any of the panelists to native.care@wsu.edu, which is on the screen there. Feel free to send any questions and we will send them out to all the panelists and get your answers back. So please let us know. You can also send any webinar ideas you have there or any comments, and we will send out the recording. But I just want to say thank you to all of you, Lisa, Trevor, and Gary, for the engaging discussion and answering all these questions today. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. Please remember to complete the evaluation survey, which will pop up once the webinar closes, or you can click on the link provided in our post-webinar emails. It's helpful information for our research staff for planning future events. We typically host a few webinars each year, so keep your eye out for notifications of future ones on our social media channels and emails. And I'll wrap it up here since we're just a little over time, but we hope to see you again at our future webinars. And thank you all so much. Keep an eye out for your recording. And again, please feel free to send any further questions to our email. Thank you, everyone.